My neighbor tried to take my land, one fence post at a time, so I let the county records end the argument. The first fence post appeared on a Thursday. Bright new cedar. Too straight, too confident. Anyone who has lived beside old property lines knows what I mean. Real boundary markers carry history. They lean. They rust. They disappear under blackberry canes and reappear after rain like old men muttering about 1,987. But this post? This was ambition in treated wood. It stood 6 feet inside my side pasture. I noticed it while carrying feed to the horses and stopped so abruptly the grain bucket bumped my shin. For a few seconds, I actually wondered if I'd misremembered the line. Age teaches humility if you let it. I'm 63. I no longer assume my first thought is holy. Then I looked up at the cottonwood stump near the ditch. Then at the rock marker by the east gate. Then at the old wire run, half swallowed by weeds. No, I had not misremembered anything. My neighbor, Gary Whitmore, had moved the line. Or rather, he was trying to. Gary had bought the acreage west of mine 2 years earlier after the Howards retired to Arizona. Since then, he had transformed 5 acres of exhausted fields into the kind of rural lifestyle project that looks impressive on social media and stupid in mud season. New barn, black fencing, stamped metal sign at the gate. Whitmore Ridge. Outdoor lights bright enough to interrogate migrating birds. He was one of those men who buy land for the aesthetic of ownership, not the discipline of coexistence. At first, we were civil. Then came the mower incident. Then the drainage dispute. Then his repeated references to our shared edge, in a tone that suggested maps were more of a suggestion than a fact. I had already learned that Gary believed confidence was a substitute for documentation. He had not yet learned that I spent 16 years as a county clerk. Different educations. I set down the grain bucket and took 3 photos of the fence post with my phone. Then 4 more from wider angles. Never confront before you document. That should be printed on tea towels for women over 50. If you've ever had someone try to take a little at a time because they thought you wouldn't make a fuss, comment 1. Encroachment loves good manners. Gary was out by his equipment shed when I walked over. He waved like we were beginning a cookout. Morning, June. It's Thursday, I said. He laughed too loudly. Right. What's up? What's up? I held up my phone. Your new fence post is on my property. He didn't even try surprise. Interesting. Nah, he said. We had it checked. It's his video. We? The guys. What guys? There is a type of male confidence built entirely from unnamed supporting personnel. The guys. The crew. A buddy. Someone who knows surveying. Someone in permits. Someone who says it's fine. I said, which surveyor? He smiled. You don't need to worry. We're just cleaning up the line. Cleaning up the line. That phrase alone could have powered my blood pressure for an hour. I looked him straight in the face. Remove it by tomorrow. His smile hardened. June. With respect, you've probably been mowing the wrong side for years. And there it was. The casual little shove. Not enough to justify fury. Just enough to make your own certainty feel socially inconvenient. Wrong side for years. I have lived on that property for 31 years. My late husband, Ellis, and I bought it when our twins were 5 and the barn still had a hole big enough to watch weather through. I know every dip, every runoff channel, every volunteer mulberry tree that grows where it shouldn't. I also know men like Gary count on women of my age to prefer peace over precision. He was about to discover I prefer both, but will choose precision first when required. I drove into town that afternoon. County recorder, plat maps, parcel history, easement filings, original survey records. People love to romanticize rural battles as if they're won with grit and shotgun posture. Nonsense. They are won with archived ink and the correct map scale. Margaret, at records, still wore her glasses on a chain, and remembered my coffee order from 2009. "What's he done?" she asked before I said a word. "Fence post." "Ah." She nodded the way doctors do when they've seen this illness before. Within 20 minutes we had the plat. Within 40, the 1,984 re-subdivision map. Within an hour, the 1,997 ditch easement amendment Gary definitely had not read and would have hated, because the amendment referenced a fixed point marker near the cottonwood stump and a drainage access strip that effectively made his cleaned-up line impossible without formal variance. I left with copies, certified copies, always certified if you want arrogance to sweat. The next morning, there were 3 more posts. I was almost impressed. That meant Gary had mistaken my silence for slowness overnight and doubled down before breakfast. Good. Escalation without research is the most generous thing an opponent can offer. I called the zoning office, then code enforcement, then a surveyor I trusted, Ellen Brooks, who wore work boots, chewed cinnamon gum, and had once reduced a 6-foot property feud to half an inch, and a very embarrassed dentist. She agreed to come Monday, Saturday afternoon. Gary himself came to my porch. No wife, no crew, just him, in a quilted vest and expensive righteousness. June. I think we got off on the wrong foot. June. I almost invited him in for the anthropological value of studying that sentence under glass. Instead, I stood in the doorway. "We can solve this neighbor to neighbor," he said. "No," I said. "We can solve it by boundary line." He smiled patiently, the way people do when they've decided you're the unreasonable one in a story they are actively writing. "I don't want this to get ugly." "Then remove the posts," he said. "I think you're attached to old assumptions." That sentence was so condescending it nearly deserved a certificate. If you're still here, comment one. There is nothing more dangerous than a polite woman with certified copies in a man's blind spot. Monday came bright and cold. Ellen arrived at 8:10 a.m. with tripod, transit, field book, and the cheerful expression of a person who enjoys measurement more than conversation. Gary came out at 8:22, no doubt alerted by the sight of official equipment and female certainty occurring too close to his breakfast. "What's this?" he asked. "A survey," I said. He scoffed. "You're overreacting." Ellen didn't look up. "Sir, please don't stand near the marker line." That improved my day. By 10:45, the result was complete. Gary's posts were not on the line, not near the line, not arguably on the line. They were between 4 feet 9 inches and 6 feet 2 inches onto my property, depending on the point. Ellen, who had no patience for personality, flagged the true line in orange and handed me the preliminary sheet. Gary went red first, then pale, then loud. "These old records are garbage," he snapped. Ellen finally looked at him fully. "No, sir. Your assumption is garbage. The records are excellent." I may have fallen in love with her a little right then, but the real blow came from the easement. The drainage strip he had partially obstructed with his cleanup fencing carried maintenance access obligations, which meant he had not only trespassed, but interfered with a recorded drainage right. Code enforcement loves documented interference because it requires fewer philosophical debates. By Wednesday, Gary had a notice. By Friday, the posts were removed. By the following Tuesday, he had paid for ditch restoration, survey reimbursement, and a formal acknowledgement of boundary line placement filed with the county. I did not ask for costs out of spite. I asked for them because memory is short and paperwork is permanent. Gary did not speak to me for 6 months. Bliss. Eventually, he resumed with a different tone. Smaller, more exact. Once, he even asked before trimming near the ditch, which in neighbor relations is roughly equivalent to a public conversion. People in town still tell the story wrong sometimes. They say I took him on. They say I put him in his place. pretend that. They say I'm not to be messed with. All flattering, all incomplete. What I did was simpler. I refused to let repetition become reality. Because that's how people lose things they meant to keep: land, authority, dignity, truth. Not usually in one dramatic theft. More often, one fence post at a time. While everyone hopes not to look impolite, I still walk that pasture every morning. The horses still cut across the corner near the cottonwood stump. The ditch still runs true after heavy rain. The orange survey flags are long gone, but I know exactly where the line sits. And sometimes, when I pass that stretch of fence, I think about how close Gary came to being right, not legally, but socially. A lot of people would have let it slide. A lot of people would have decided 4 feet wasn't worth the trouble. But boundaries are not measured only in feet. Sometimes they are measured in whether you are willing to insist, calmly and repeatedly, that what is yours will remain so.